my 5 favorite things that George Kittle said today on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast. A key to the Niners-Cardinals matchup, the key. He reveals his thoughts on Deebo Samuel, Devondre Campbell walking out on the team, Week 17 last year, the standard, the culture that Niners set, and his relationship with Kyle Shanahan. Let's start here with him talking about the division and the Cardinals.
That's crazy.
I mean, the Cardinals, though, like how concerned are you about the Cardinals? I feel like they've never been a threat to you.
I know they put 46 on us last year in the last game of the season.
Cardinals could be all right this year.
How they let Budda Baker kind of he literally just plays what he wants to do. The whole defense is based so Budda Baker can just freestyle. It's insane. And he's like one of the best freestyling players I've ever seen. And it's a very complicated defense where the whole thing is just disguises. And then their guys are smart enough to handle it. And they have a really good secondary too. So, and I think they just added to their D-line. So they have a chance to be really good. The Rams are going to be really good. I don't know about the Seahawks. I mean, they got Cooper Kupp and my guy Eric Saubert.
Okay, so let's start with when the 49ers schedule came out, there was a lot of attention paid to the fact that they play the Seahawks week 1. The Cardinals week 3 is a bigger threat of a game. And what he just identified, for all the talk of the Niners defense, forget about the week 17 game because they hardly had any starters playing, but 47 points is what the Cardinals put on them. The Niners scored 24 that day. 47 tied the most points the Cardinals have ever scored against the 49ers. Juwan Jennings got ejected. It was a mess of a game. But the week 5 game, the Cardinals won that game 24-23. The Niners scored 23 points, but remember, 7 of those were 6, but 7 came off of the blocked field goal touchdown returned by Deebo Lenore. So the Niners scored 16 points on offense. What Kittle has identified for all the talk of the defense is against the Cardinals, the number one matchup is Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy against Jonathan Gannon and Budda Baker. And I think not having Brandon Ayuk matters much more week 3 against Arizona than it matters week 1 against Seattle. Ayuk went off in that week 5 game against the Cardinals. The Cardinals shut the Niners offense down by scoring because the Niners were 1 of 6 in the red zone. Terrible. They scored 1 touchdown. It was short yardage to George Kittle, or they were 1 of 5 on goal to go situations, 1 of 6 on goal to go situations, 1 of 5 on red zone trips scoring touchdowns. And it was a Kittle touchdown. They moved the ball. Jordan Mason was 6 yards a carry. But they got helped by their defense that day because Deebo Lenore had the touchdown. Nick Bosa had a big interception at midfield before the half that led to a 49ers field goal. Niners led 23-10 in that game. The last 4 meetings before last year, the Niners had won 4 games in a row against Arizona, and they scored a ton of points. Well, Jonathan Gannon kept the Niners out of the end zone week 5. Offense scored 16 points. The Niners scored 38 in their 2 games in 2022. They scored 35 and 45 in their 2 games in 2023. Kyle Shanahan's offense was kicking the Cardinals' ass. They were averaging 39 points a game in the previous 4 meetings. That's 156 points to the Cardinals' 68. So they were dominating offensively. That came to a screeching halt last year, even when you take out the Week 17 game. Ayuk went off. If you go watch the highlights, as I didn't do a full tape study of Niners-Cardinals Week 5 here on June 25th, 2025, but watch the highlights. Ayuk went off. He had 8 for 147. Kittle had a great game, 8 for 64. So the chess piece that he's talking about, Budda Baker, that is Kyle Shanahan's responsibility, and that is Brock Purdy's responsibility. And they handled it really well last year. And then in the red zone, it was bad. And then they, 47-24. But, I mean, you heard Kittle there. This is not shocking. The Cardinals, the bigger threat in that division. Kyler, you'll remember, if you don't remember anything I'm saying about that game, you'll remember that Kyler Murray scored a 50-yard rushing touchdown on the opening series of the game. So I thought that was really interesting by George. We're going to spend so much time talking about Robert Saleh and the defense, but against Arizona, the key matchup is Budda Baker and Brock Purdy playing chess, and Kyle Shanahan having Brock Purdy ready for that chess match and finding ways to score in the red zone. And, having Christian McCaffrey week 3 would make a big difference. And then hopefully you get Ayuk back in time for their second meeting, which is November 16th. So you would think week 11, Brandon Ayuk would be back for that. But great insight there from George. George, shorter clip here on Deebo Samuel.
Were you bummed to see him go to Washington?
I'm happy for him that he went to Washington. Like, guys need a fresh start sometimes, and he wanted a fresh start. And so I'm very happy for him. I'm sad that I don't have him on my team anymore because I just loved having him around the locker room and stuff like that.
Big breath there before he thinks about how to answer that question.
Were you bummed to see him go to Washington?
I'm happy for him that he went to Washington. Like, guys need a fresh.
I think sometimes maybe teams need a fresh start too. And, I know I battled with people last year about Deebo's usage at times, handing the ball to Deebo. People, that was crazy. Why would you hand the ball to Deebo in a 3rd and 6? Yeah, it's bad play. But maybe the fresh start isn't just for Deebo. Maybe it's for Kyle Shanahan, just to not. Deebo was when other things would break, Deebo was kind of the emergency tool for Kyle Shanahan, and for good reason. He rode him to a lot of success, but maybe it's good for Deebo, and maybe it's good for Kyle Shanahan not to have Deebo to default to and have to find other ways to create offense. Hopefully he's not in that situation where he's trying really hard to find ways to create offense. But the other thing that was interesting from that, before I get to number 3, the other thing that was interesting from that is Kittle defending that video of Deebo jogging through basically a warm-up in the installation of the offense a few weeks ago. I didn't have a chance to. I remember if I was on vacation. I didn't talk about it. But as someone who's watched a lot of Deebo practice, I found that video completely unconcerning. As George said, you throw the pads on, then that's when you get Deebo. I don't know what they're going to get from Deebo this year. I do think he's in a good spot with Cliff Kingsbury, in addition to obviously the quarterback Jaden Daniels. But watching Deebo jog in a practice and acting like, oh, well, he's lost his burst. What burst? I watched a lot of those practices. I just saw that video. I was like, yeah, I've seen this. I've seen this Deebo before. So that didn't concern me. This is my point there. This Devondre Campbell thing, very insightful.
Culture is awesome.
You have a great culture. So I assume that was handled.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure security escorted him off the property and said, don't come back.
Yeah, because he got,
that's how you handle
cut
culture.
like the next day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Is there any parting words
No.
that you're saying or anybody saying?
So, I had no idea until I saw him walking off the field. And apparently, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Like, John Lynch came out of the suite and was, yelling at him.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you guys surprised that went down? Because you're kind of being in the locker room.
To that extent, yes. For that to happen, yes, I was surprised. Hey, there's Mike Anderson, our head of security. He's the man. Love Mike. He's our head of security for Tight End U every single year. He's the man. Yeah, that was a wild experience. But Kyle and John handled it, and no one saw him again. Yeah,
great answer. He said, yes, I was surprised that it happened to that extent. I thought the really interesting insight there was John Lynch coming out and yelling at him. But I don't think they were surprised. Just like I was surprised that happened. But if you go back, check the tape, I said it when they signed him. They didn't want to do it. They were in a bad spot. Michael Kendricks, Eric, left them at the altar, and they got stuck. And the history of what he put on paper with Green Bay and blaming the Packers and all that, not their type of guy. But the insight there about Lynch yelling at him, there's a little more. I don't know. Let's see.
It's pretty wild. I just don't know if
not a good move.
No.
Not a good career.
Oh, so then he goes on to say, I don't think, he's probably not playing in the league again. Week 17 against the Cardinals. George, a couple things about the way he talked about last year. So we had a lot of injuries and we sucked. It started to sound like, Final Destination, the movie Final Destination here. Everybody dropping around him. This is number 4 on the list, if you're keeping track.
I only played 15 snaps in the last game of the season because I was like, look, what do you want from me at this point? I love football, but I also want to continue to play at a high level for a long time. And I was like, we had a plan. We were like, hey, you're going to play a half. And I'm like, all right, I'll play a half. Sounds great. And then third play of the game, our rookie running back gets rolled up on and just starts screaming like he broke his leg. And I looked at him. I looked to the side and I was like, get me off of this fucking field. Holy cow.
Are you bringing that conversation to them or are they?
Oh yeah, no. I think I just went and talked to Kyle about it because he has an open door policy. And we just talked about it for a little bit. And he was like, I don't want you to play the whole game. He's like, I get where we are. It is what it is. Just go out there, have a good week of practice with the boys, try to keep the spirits up.
A couple things, and later he talks more about how on the play that Juwan Jennings got ejected on, one of the officials popped a hammy, and George again was like, "Get me!" looking around, going like, everyone's getting hurt, people are dropping all around me. I thought that last part was interesting too. Like, what is it? How do you maintain a culture during a 6-11 season? You still have a standard to uphold. So, what was the purpose for George Kittle in Week 17? Kyle Shanahan saying, "Hey, look, man, like." Get out there. I'm not going to run you into the ground here week 17, but let's run through practice. Let's make sure the standard's being upheld. So many of these players are coming back. A lot of guys are gone, but a lot of guys are coming back in 2025. How do you maintain culture? Like, you stick to your fundamentals when things are failing. And they did that, and that gives them a chance to hit the ground running in 2025. And then he talked, but thing number 5, talking with what George Kittle said about his relationship with Kyle Shanahan.
Those are very unusual conversations to have.
They are.
And I'll say Taylor Lewan there saying those are unusual conversations to have. He's talking about how George has a say within the organization when it comes to a variety of things.
Those are very unusual conversations to have.
They are. But I mean, like, shoot, man, me and Shanahan were rookies together with the Niners. So, like, that was his first head coaching job. It was John Lynch's first GM job. So, like, I don't know, we've been on the same page for a long time. And the older I've gotten, the more I've played, like, the more comfortable I feel talking to them about certain things. I don't know, man, just continually just having those open conversations I think is healthy for a team. And I've never, like, once ever gone into Kyle's office, like, that uncomfortable. Like, no matter, like, I mean, he at one time, I was like 2021, he got on my ass because I was like, he didn't like a couple practice reps that I had when we were doing a joint practice. And then he roasted me for it in a team meeting, which is fine. And I'm okay with that. But, like, it's never affected our relationship. He's a head coach. Like, I want him to coach me as hard as possible.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, he's also a guy, like, I go to Cabo with him almost once a year and we golf and, drink. And then during the season we grind, which is pretty fun.
I think it's really a good insight. The Shanahan coaching tree is a bunch of guys who grind and who have found different ways to make themselves valuable. I think the Mike McDaniel story, in Washington, deciding they've got McVay there and LaFleur. How am I going to make a difference? I'll become the run game guy. So you've got to be inventive. You've got to be a competitor. And I think, he looks, Kyle Shanahan, you hear it in this whole conversation. The whole conversation with George is really good. Will Compton and Taylor Lewan, really insightful. He talks about his preparation, all kinds of stuff. And it really does highlight how critical having the right types of guys is to Kyle Shanahan. It is, I think it's that way that Dan Campbell would tell you, Bill Belichick would tell you. At any high level, you need players who have very high accountability and personal responsibility, so you can treat them like men and have the relationship that Kyle Shanahan, I think he thinks, he thrives with, adults, the kind of players that are like what John Lynch was as a player, guys who you can coach hard, but also guys who have a very high level of personal accountability. And if you have that, then you can have a lot of transparency, back and forth conversations. I think Kyle values that from players. He wants players to have it, but for players to have it, that level of input, you've got to be able to trust that if they're not going to show up for 2 weeks because they're doing their own thing, like Bosa didn't do it this year, or Trent or Kittle, or like these guys are going to show up ready to roll. And it's a central part, I think, to any successful team, but you see it time and time again. It's really a central part of Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch's operation, and George Kittle's a central part to that leadership. Lead by example. He laughed about the thing that everyone kind of jokes about, how Kyle Shanahan looks now versus the way he looked in year one of his administration, and that's because he leads by example too, because he grinds. And I think the way they finished last year, not with wins and losses, but that attitude that he described going into that Cardinal game, the way they tried to practice, even though a lot of guys didn't play. That's part of setting the tone for 2025. So we'll find out, like, really quickly, did it work? Did it work? But I came away from this conversation feeling like George Kittle's pretty optimistic that it did.